Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. I have some Sunny D, smooth orange, and some milk chocolate covered peanuts, so those are quite delicious. Let's hop back into this game. Load from here. Satoshi-kun managed to get along with his stepfathers even though he experienced some stress. He was even getting along with his aunt. But in order to protect Satoko, he always had to step in and suffer. I didn't really know anything about Satoko, but I had to admit I felt hostile towards her. I felt jealous because she was monopolizing him. It seems that their aunt has been tyrannizing Satoko-chan even more lately. That must be what's causing Satoshi-kun's sickness. Eri heaved a sigh. As he said, Satoshi-kun had been absent a few times lately. He seemed a bit tired, too. He looked normal when around everybody else, but he looked a bit depressed when he was alone. So you invited him to join the team to relieve his stress, didn't you? Yes, that's right. But he looks stressed again now. How can we save him this time? I don't know. Eri smiled powerlessly. I couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed about that, because Satoshi-kun put his trust in him. Just between you and me, Satoshi-kun recently told me that he wanted to leave the team. Eh? How come? He claimed he was tired of it. That's what he said, but I believe he actually wants to spend more time with Satoko-chan. He thinks that Satoko-chan might end up being tortured while he's at practice. I think he's concerned about that. Ellipses. I was left speechless for a while. Satoko again. Satoko. Why did Satoshi-kun have to sacrifice so much for her? Just by ignoring her, his stress would melt away. Of course, I knew he couldn't do that. If that were the case, then the blame lay with his little sister. I knew how badly she'd been treated, but that only happened because she made things worse for herself. It was her fault that she couldn't establish a decent relationship with her aunt. If Satoko were more mature like Satoshi-kun, her home life wouldn't have gotten so bad. Satoshi-kun wouldn't have to suffer those indirect blows. In the meantime, the baseball team's practice match had become one-sided. It wasn't even worth watching anymore. The members of the losing team were just goofing off. The sky had turned cloudy, too. It was depressing. It didn't look like it'd rain soon, though. The gray sky hadn't brought along any cool air. It just felt disgusting. Eri became quiet. He was looking down around his feet. I, meanwhile, just stared at Satoshi-kun. To me, he didn't look active anymore. He was once able to enjoy playing baseball, and he felt fine, but he got sick again just because the relationship between Satoko and her aunt had deteriorated. I couldn't help but say it. Shouldn't we do something about Satoko instead? It was just a murmur, but Eri had definitely caught it. What do you mean, Sonozaki-san? It's not that complicated. If Satoko were stronger, Satoshi-kun wouldn't have to deal with the stress. I think Satoko is the cause of everything. I don't know about that. Yes, you do. If she didn't cause any trouble, he wouldn't have to step in, would he? He wouldn't have to take over in the fight between Satoko and her aunt, right? Satoshi-kun never got scared of any trouble. No matter how formidable the enemy, he'd bravely stand up to protect the weak. I knew that because I could vividly imagine it. Whenever their aunt chides Satoko, Satoshi-kun steps in order to protect her. The aunt probably didn't like it. Though Satoshi-kun didn't have to fight, the aunt would attack him anyway, and the fight would then be between the aunt and him. Satoko might then tease the aunt by sticking out her tongue, hiding behind his back, and pretending to be scared. I don't think Satoko's doing that. And, again, Satoko is not to blame in this situation. She'd never think about how deeply he was being hurt. Because of Satoko, Satoshi-kun had become cornered and stressed. I'm surprised to hear this from you, Sonozaki-san. I thought you were Satoko-chan's friend, her classmate. A big sister kind of figure. I thought you'd always be on her side. But what you've said is surprising to me. Eri looked at me suspiciously. I could tell what he was thinking about me. I'd said too much. Mion Sonozaki and Satoko Hojo were friends. They're close, so Mion would have been encouraging her after the situation at home got tougher. That's what Mion was supposed to do. I had totally forgotten about that and spoken as myself. It's only natural that Eri would give me a suspicious look. He might end up changing his impression of Mion Sonozaki entirely. I'd have to apologize to her about this and ask her to put things straight. I'd totally messed up. Even so, I didn't think I'd said anything wrong. I'd objectively looked at the situation and made a modest proposal. To be honest, I was simply afraid that he might leave the team. I couldn't go to the school in Hanamizawa, so the baseball field was the only place where I could see him. I could even say that he was my reason for living. That's right, I was in love with him. But I wasn't going to tell him how I felt, for I was satisfied just being by his side. I certainly couldn't ask for anything more. After all, I couldn't reveal my true identity. I had to pretend to be Mion in order to live in Okonomiya. I thought that maybe I should leave Okonomiya in order to be free. But that's stupid. No matter how tough my life would be, I'd prefer to be here with Satoshi-kun, stroking my head every now and then. Why did I love him that much? I read about it in some manga once. You don't need a reason to be in love. I was surprised at myself for being like this. Calm down, Shion. I breathed out slowly, then held my breath, trying to slow my throbbing heart. I felt a bit calmer. At that point, a clear thought came into my head. I want to be with Satoshi-kun, so I want him to stay on the team. So I want to get rid of his concerns and his stress. So what? So what can I do to achieve all that? My head started to cool down as I heard the umpires shout, "Game, set, and match." Some days I see him, some days I don't. A clear sky gets cloudy, and the rain will always stop eventually. I thought his absence was just like that, but he was actually on the verge of a breakdown. Notebook, page 19. The rainy season was just around the corner, and the air had become so humid that my shirt stuck to my skin. It had been a few weeks since Satoshi-kun stopped showing up for baseball practice. I looked for him as soon as I arrived at the field. He's not here yet. Did I get here too early? I want to see him playing in the field right when I get here. I had started arriving late because of those feelings. However, he wasn't here today either. I didn't even bother hiding my disappointment anymore. Everybody knew by now how I felt. The team members from Mion's class came over to try and console me, but I shooed them away. "What's going on, Sonozaki-san? Are you feeling sick?" Even Eri couldn't comfort me. I was aware that he, too, knew why I was like this. "I'm going home. I don't feel like watching the practice today." "Look, we're having a meeting with Okonomiya Titans later. I wanted you to be there because you are a manager. Don't treat me like a manager. I never agreed to be one." Eri looked down, not knowing what to say. "All right. Please help us again when you feel like it. Maybe I won't be coming back. If you really need a manager, look for somebody else." "Please do come again, whenever you feel like it. Satoshi-kun will be sad if you're not here when he comes back." I ignored him and turned around. I had already set up my schedule with Mion, so I didn't have to ask her every time anymore. I had tried to contact her a couple times to ask how Satoshi-kun was doing in school, but I hadn't been able to get through to her. Apparently the hag had sensed that I might be in contact with Sis. In other words, Sis was being watched. As a result, it hasn't been easy to contact her. Kasai, who had been helping me contact her, seemed to also have been marked. People knew he was loyal to me. I hadn't seen him for a while either. All I could do was wonder how Satoshi-kun was doing. I was frustrated, but there was no way for me to know. My head was filled with worries, but something surprised me out of the blue. Somebody called out to me when I was about to leave the field on my bike. Me-chan! Hello! I'd never seen this girl before. Luckily, she called me Me-chan. There's only one person who refers to me on that way, as far as I know. Rena! I'm surprised to see you here. Her name is Rina. Ryuga. Ragu. Her real name is Ren. Right. But she wants to be called Rena. So that's what we call her. She moved here in April. I had some information on her, but it was all ambiguous. Sis was still a bit uncertain about her since she's so new. It was hard for me to handle someone like that. I didn't know how to act around her as Mion, so I decided to pretend to be in an obvious sulky mood. That way she wouldn't talk to me as much, assuming that Mion was simply feeling bad. Well, that's how I really am, anyway. Are you going home, Mi-chan? Yeah, I'm not feeling well. Sorry. Let's go together, then. I wanted to say that I'd rather be alone, but there's only one road to Hinamizawa. So asking to be alone would look odd. The only way to not seem suspicious would be to walk home with her. Yeah, let's go. Rena quietly nodded. I unlocked my bike. Mi-chan, do you have an umbrella? Nope. It might rain soon, so let's hurry up a bit, since you don't have one. As she predicted, we were attacked by pouring rain in our way. We ended up taking shelter in a small shack in front of a bus stop. It's pouring, but it doesn't look like it's going to last long since the sky over there is clear. Yeah. I heard the sound of rain pattering on the rooftop and the raindrops jumping into puddles. It sounded loud, but it made me feel strangely calm. I zoned out for a moment, then Rena talked to me while looking up at the rainy sky. I was worried about you, 'cause you looked so down. All the baseball team members knew I was depressed because I hadn't seen Satoshi-kun recently. Most of them attend the school in Hinamizawa, so it wasn't surprising that she knew as well. I hadn't been able to contact Sis these past few weeks, but I was sure she had an idea of how I feel about Satoshi-kun, and how I would feel if he didn't come to his baseball practice. Sis was probably pretending to act a little depressed during her day to day in Hinamizawa to avoid creating a big gap between our moods, but neither of us knew the details about the other right now. So she wouldn't be able to answer if others asked her what was wrong. She'd only be able to say, "Leave me alone." That might lead to more people becoming worried. Rena must have thought Mion was depressed. That must be why she came all the way to see me. She must have known what was going on because she knew that I was at the baseball field. Do you feel lonely because Satoshi-kun is avoiding us? Did Watanagashi already happen? Because depending at what point we are... well, we remember Game 1, Peanut Butter Jelly Time, when Keiichi started behaving like Satoshi. Which means Satoshi might be having early onset Hinamizawa syndrome at this point, even if he hasn't killed his aunt yet. To be fair, the only thing you need to trigger the Hinamizawa syndrome, which is the brainworm parasites that disintegrate upon death of the host, so there's no trace after the person dies, is either leaving Hinamizawa, at which point your body, isn't regularly being exposed to stuff to keep stuff in check, or even if you stay in Hinamizawa, the biggest thing that creates Hinamizawa syndrome to start, which usually also tends to be something that happens that would cause you to want to leave Hinamizawa, In fact, without this second thing, usually I would say there's probably not much of a reason for you to leave Hinamizawa. And usually any reason to leave Hinamizawa is because of the second reason. So I would say in that situation, leaving Hinamizawa really doesn't matter that much. I mean, it still does, because there's some sort of nutrient in the food that's not only infecting people with the brain parasite, but also your body goes into sort of withdrawal or reaction, and then stuff becomes active. But the biggest thing that causes Hinamizawa syndrome is severe psychological stress. And, well, Satoshi definitely is in a qualifying circumstance. That would really suck. Imagine if everyone had to deal with that in real life, to where if you suffered too much psychological stress, you would then develop like brain parasites that would then cause hallucinations and severe paranoia. I mean, that would not help the severe stress get any better, or your psychological health. Glad Hinamizawa syndrome's not real, and if it is, at least it's a thing I'm not exposed to. Because I feel like there'd be 1,000 times over the course of my life stuff that would have triggered that shit to fucking happen. Having deduced what been going on with Satoshi-kun from what she just said, he had been distancing himself from the others lately because of exhaustion. That's what it sounded like, at least. Or the severe stress triggering Hinamizawa syndrome. Also, I don't know if he's killed his aunt at this point or not, but at the very least, he's severely paranoid considering hitting people with a baseball bat, and he's also considering killing his aunt, but also he's also becoming paranoid. Like, Satoshi is probably seeing the Hawkeye thing and Mion and Rena and the others, like we were seeing in Game 1, Onikakushi, the first game in the series. So, I mean, if you're familiar with Hinamizawa, you know what I'm talking about. So he could be distancing himself because he's seeing hallucinations in regard to Rena and Mion that is making him scared of them, as well as think that they hate him and that they're a threat. Also, again, severe psychological stress, the issues with his aunt, and the fact that he's either planning to kill his aunt or has already done it. I don't know. That's what it sounded like, at least. He looked like he was very worried about Satoko-chan. I think he's really on edge. I feel bad for him. He really cares about his sister. He has a lot of courage. What I'd said sounded hollow, as I knew too well how much of a burden Satoko had become. But I think he'd feel even worse if you also looked that depressed, I think. I don't want that. I know. But if you really don't, then you need to smile for him, otherwise he might really feel cornered. I know you're strong. You can smile even if it's just pretend, so I want you to smile no matter what. You know that lies can become true sometimes. What she was saying in a nutshell was this. Both Satoshi, Kun, and Satoko were totally wiped out. If Mion was also depressed, even though she's the sort of person who usually lightens the mood, their situation would be stuck in a vicious cycle. Rena sounded more like she was trying to give me advice than trying to console me. She must be more mature than she looks. Sis told me that she was a funny girl, with a few bad habits, but she seemed to have another very mature side to her. Isn't that true of everybody? Do you love Satoshi-kun? Yeah, though I shouldn't have told her that. I immediately responded. In that case, why don't you smile? Rena smiled herself. I believe Satoshi-kun will feel better if he sees your smile. I know you feel powerless now, but your smile will give him strength. I know what you're saying, but it's not that easy. Rena giggled and nodded. He'll come back after he's done with his part-time job. His part-time job? I almost asked that question, but managed to stop myself. From the tone of Rena's voice, it sounded like it was something everybody knew. His part-time job, huh? I wonder when it'll end. Until he has enough money, I guess. But he'll finish by Satoko-chan's birthday at latest. I tried to figure out what was going on from what she said. I had to listen very carefully to uncover the whole picture. Satoshi-kun seemed to be working in order to make some money. I don't think it's easy to find a job when you're still in school. Sis might have had something to do with it. His job only seemed temporary, and it seemed to have something to do with Sato's birthday. It wasn't that difficult to figure out. Satoshi was working and saving up to buy his little sister something expensive for her birthday. He was trying to comfort her, even though he was so torn up himself. Satoko again. Satoshi-kun was already worn out because of her, and he was now working for her sake, even though he was exhausted. How stupid. It would be easier for him to just forget about Satoko. Did we say that last part out loud? Because when we said that sort of thing, you know, Dr. Erie doesn't have active Hinamizawa syndrome. Grantedly, Rena's quite frequently goes into remission. She seems to be a very formidable brain in there. Okay, I don't think we said it. There's no, like, asterisks. Like, tisk. Did you read my mind, Rena? Is it the Hinamizawa syndrome? Is it the brain parasites with, like, the space ghosts? Like Skibidi Toilet? You know, basically is the ghost, god, deity person, Oyashiro-sama, possessing you right now? Fusing with your personality? Because technically there's like so many different explanations for Hinamizawa syndrome, and technically they're all true. It's purposely ambiguous. It's like, what's the correct answer? A, B, C, D, or E? And the answer is all of the above, any combination of the above, just one of the answers, and none of the above at all times. Sometimes it's just normal psychological instability that all of the characters in this entire game have a reason to feel. I mean, honestly, yeah, I mean, I can relate to that via lots of things in my life. But I thankfully don't have explanation A, brain parasites that are causing brain damage in terms of impulse control and empathy and emotional stability. We also have the stuff with Oyashiro-sama, where technically you have Oyashiro-sama, which, let's be clear, Oyashiro herself is actually a benevolent being. But there's other ghosts, gods, witches, crystal parallel dimension beings, depending on how you interpret it. Actual fucking aliens. Extra-dimensional entities that are influencing people and possessing them. There's also a point where you had ghosts that were trying to cross between dimensions, and they don't have suitable bodies in this world, so the only way that they can live in this world is by taking over a human being, one that's actually recently gone through puberty and is the point where the brain is the most active, you know, of all the hormones and everything. The problem is, not only is that already a very emotionally unstable point in a person's life, but also it's like the fucking Johnny Silverhand program in Cyberpunk 2077. It's the chip is trying to overwrite the person. The same way the ghost, like think Final Fantasy The Spirits Within, a 2001 Final Fantasy movie that isn't based on any of the games and was actually very groundbreaking in terms of CGI technology, which honestly a lot of people will go back and see that stuff now and they feel like it's very dated and also a bit uncanny valley. That kind of makes a lot of the characters look a bit lifeless. But for the time, it was actually cutting edge, like technology. But the main point is this. There was extra-dimensional alien ghosts that were trying to live in a new world, and it's also like if a lot of the Final Fantasies have the crystals as well as they have life stream, to where a planet itself is a living being, and the human souls are going in and out of a collective life force of the planet. At which point, the aliens are trying to sort of circumvent that and replace them, but also they're running into problems because it's like, say, if an organ transplant with a person or a blood transfusion of the wrong blood type, the body doesn't accept it. So, but the idea is the ghosts are trying to possess human beings. Like the one version of Hidemazawa syndrome is that it's actually an extra-dimensional space traveling ghosts from another galaxy that are trying to have a physical body, and they're in a spiritual sort of dimension, and the only way to come into a physical world is by possessing a human body. But the thing is, like I said, Johnny Silverhand sort of thing. They're overriding the mental, the neural networks and all that shit of a human being. Which one, you're actively erasing the person and you're killing them to replace them with someone else. But also the ghost replacing them tends to have some memory issues, tends to have some lack ability to really recognize themselves. It also can manifest as sort of like a split personality disorder. But also, it's that, one, even if the human that's being taken over doesn't realize that they're being possessed and overwritten by another entity, they realize something's wrong. They realize they're in a heightened emotional state, and they realize that their thoughts are not their own, and they're behaving in a weird way, and they're starting to not really be aware of things as much. So no matter what, even if the person's not consciously aware of it, they're at least aware of the changes, and would definitely be freaked out by that. Plus, the changes in the brain chemistry would also be causing severe instability. But most of all, even if the person's not consciously aware of it, the body is. The brain and the body would be aware that something's very wrong and very dangerous and that they're facing death. Which, simply put, is this. Even if the person isn't consciously aware of that, they'll have the emotional feeling of their body telling them that something's wrong. Almost like a premonition or a feeling. I guess the best way to describe it, imagine you're in the middle of a forest and you can hear that there's animals around you and they're moving quite a bit and they sound like they're getting closer. You don't know what those animals are and you can't see them. But you definitely feel very emotionally agitated and scared. Now the question here is this. With Rena reacting this way, one, is it just a hallucination on Shion's part to where Rena is still perfectly normal and Shion in her increased stress state is just imagining Rena like this? Or is it that Rena is actually physically changing? Because technically she already has Hidemazawa syndrome. She had it, like, middle stages of it a few months ago at this point in the story, which would be like a year and a half before she even meets Kiichi. But she came back, she originally had left Hidemazawa, and then her body was freaking out because she was leaving, and she came back. That, and she did some stuff, so really there weren't very many other schools that she was welcome to go to. That being said, she was at least able to go to remission by coming back to Hidemazawa and at least living a somewhat okay life up to this point. Now, there might be some times that she has little episodes of it rearing its head because technically it's an incurable disease. So technically, even if Hidemazawa syndrome is largely in remission for her, there's going to be episodes. She's going to have. It's kind of like saying a person with panic attacks or anxiety issues. They're not fucking freaking out all the fucking time. But there are going to be sometimes, especially if we're talking about like this situation, where it's already a stressful situation, and even without supernatural shit going on, Rena could probably tell listening to the rest of, even though Shion didn't outright say, like, blaming Satoko and everything for stuff, to Rena at least, it might be noticeable in her body expressions the way she's saying things. But even though Dr. Erie was a bit agitated with her over her, especially being very blatant about it. I mean, heck, if she took it one step further, she was going to, say that she probably should just kill Satoko so she's not a burden on Satoshi. But main point is, like, he was agitated, but he didn't become killing intent. Like, at no point was there any, feeling that Dr. Erie was considering physically attacking Shion and killing her. Like, the best way to describe it is this. Dr. Erie expressed agitation, frustration, and anger, and disappointment with Shion, with what she expressed about Satoko. Because obviously, he, one, cares about, air quotes, Mion, and respects her. So her to express that sort of thing would, in of itself, feel like a betrayal. As well as he cares about Satoko, so he feels angry because then she's insulting and threatening someone he cares about. Same with Rena. Rena cares very much about Satoko. So talking bad of Satoko and threatening her or being dismissive of Satoko's feelings is going to make Rena angry because she feels like, we're mistreating her friend that she cares about, that she's basically willing to kill to protect Satoko. But it's also the fact that Mion is also her close friend, and we're all supposed to be, friends together. And for Mion to basically express this sort of feeling, it's a betrayal of the friendship. Even though it's in regards to Satoko and not Rena, it's a betrayal of the friendship. It's a betrayal of the group. Even more so, especially for people that would be either prone to paranoia or to having previous experiences with being betrayed by people that they thought they trusted, or even abandonment issues, or previous PTSD trauma response issues, which honestly, yes, I can understand all of those things. This would definitely be a very explosively reactive situation to put Ren into, because even more so than the concern about Satoko is in the emotional state that is the very delicate balance of Rena not going fucking psycho, is that she depends on her friends and that she has history of PTSD, of trauma, of betrayal, of people that she thought she could trust turning their backs on her or even hurting her, and people having lied to her or mistreated her. What it really comes down to is this. Rena's main feeling here, aside from the fact that she loves Satoko and is upset at the idea of the betrayal of Satoko because she cares about Satoko for Satoko's sake, but above that, far, 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 far above that, is Rena's own personal emotional insecurities about her own well-being. Because at the end of the day is this. She cares more about her own friendships and her own, not necessarily her own safety, but so much as her acceptance, her feeling of belonging. And she values Mion as part of this group. She values Mion a lot. She feels Mion accepts her and cares about her and loves her. But she also feels Mion feels that way about Satoko. And what I'm saying is she's not angry out of a feeling of jealousy. More so a sort of logical comparison. And that is this. She depends very much upon Rena depends very strongly on feeling that she can trust Mion, and that Mion can be trusted, and that Mion loves and cares about her friend, Rena. But it's also, like I said, it's not jealousy in regards to Satoko. It's the fact that if Mion, who loves Satoko as a close friend in the same way that she loves Rena, if that same Mion, who loves and cherishes and is loyal to Satoko, can become so cold, dismissive, and just outright dastardly in regards to Satoko. If someone, air quotes Mion, who loves Satoko, can basically decide that she doesn't care about Satoko, and someone that she claims to love decides that, I don't really care about this person, I'm going to blame them for this shit, and treat them like garbage. What this tells Rena is this. If Mion is willing to treat Satoko in that way, if Mion is willing to betray and abandon Satoko in such a heartbreaking way, then why on earth would there be any expectation at all that Mion wouldn't do the same exact betrayal and abandonment to Rena? That's what's occurring here. Yes, she's upset at the idea that, and again, we'll probably hear more of a focus on her saying, oh, you're thinking that Satoko's an issue, and you're angry at Satoko. And again, that's a reasonable thing to be upset about. That's the main thing Eri was upset about. Because, again, he also felt a little bit of betrayal, but it was more so, and Rena probably feels that too, like a little bit of betrayal, because, she respects Mion. And so when you see your friend say something that you think is despicable, you feel like you lose respect for them, and it hurts you because you thought, you held them in such high regard. And that's certainly still true of Rena. Same way, Dr. Eri cares about Satoko. So yes, on the one hand, Dr. Eri cares about Satoko, Rena cares about Satoko. Two, Dr. Eri, has a respect for Mion. And for Shion to say what she did, it makes him feel like he loses a bit of respect. Rena probably feels that too. But Rena has a third factor, not counting the Hidemasawa syndrome. That's factor number 4, which that is perhaps the most dangerous factor here. I feel like I want to make a Fear Factor reference and just have like a floating head of Joe Rogan float by. I think Joe Rogan's interesting to listen to. But anyway, enough of me getting distracted. Point 3 is this. Rena sees it as that if Mion is willing to betray that oath of friendship and love and camaraderie that she has with Satoko, then it also says that Rena's dependency on her feeling of belonging and love and feeling that she can rely on Mion, it tells her that she can't rely on that. It tells Rena that if Satoko is so easily disposed of by Mion, then isn't Rena disposable? Isn't Rena replaceable? Wouldn't Mion then say these horrible things? Wouldn't Rena then know that Mion would think these horrible things also about Rena? Heck, maybe Mion already is thinking these things about Rena. Heck, maybe Mion is even thinking worse things about Rena. Maybe Mion wants Rena to die. Maybe she doesn't want to be my friend anymore. Yes, we're trying to empathize with the fucking video game characters. 07th expansion's like, you're thinking too much about the story. I'm like, it's like you guys said in the after party things that you wanted people to try to understand the story a bit deeper. And everyone's like, yeah, but you're doing it wrong. I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm just saying this. Rena probably feels, even though I probably said this the most roundabout, confused. But then again, I have, like, apparently, like I said, I do a thing called disorganized speech. So the way I just speak and discuss things, it's a kind of a jumbled mess. Technically, it's also on a list of symptoms for people with schizophrenia, but I don't think I have any of the other symptoms for that stuff. So I think we're good. Pretty sure I don't have Hinamasawa syndrome. And more likely in this situation, both Shion and Rena are already probably having some symptoms. Though Rena's further along. But like I said, she's usually in remission. But I'm just saying, Rena, like, it could be both people, but no matter what, Rena is very pissed off. Because Dr. Eerie, he was disappointed, he was angry, he was mainly just disappointed. At no point was he considering, dragging Mion into the fucking bushes and killing her on the spot. And everyone's like, oh, but that's Rena's friend. Why would Rena do that? Because Rena is very, very emotional about this. Because she cares so much, and it's such a strong emotional feeling. Like I said, maybe you just have to watch the anime to understand it, but just saying this. Obviously, Shion doesn't say the wrong thing in this scenario, because there's a rest of a story that doesn't consist of just Rena killing Shion right now. Though that'd be very confusing the next day at school when Mion shows up to school and Rena's like, wait a second, Mion? It's like, up. Nothing? Like, huh. It's like, but didn't I kill Mion yesterday and hide her body in the woods? But, like, obviously we're not going to go down that route because, well, we know the rest of the story. Which, honestly, all things considered, actually, the rest of the story might have gone better had Rena fucking snapped and killed Shion and hid her corpse somewhere in the fucking mountains. Heck, we're around Watanagashi. There's no reason why it couldn't have gone that route. But I'm saying this. Dr. Eerie was agitated, frustrated, disappointed, but at no point was he considering killing Shion, who he thought was Mion. Rena still thinks we're Mion. And at this point, depending, like, if Shion were to say the wrong thing, like, if she were to actually outright say that, it'd be better if, like, Satoko were to just die so that Satoshi wouldn't have to deal with her, Rena would immediately just drag Shion into those trees on the left and just kill her on the spot. Like, she would just start digging a hole, and she would bury Shion in a shallow grave right there, and then probably piss on the grave. Like I said, obviously that's not what's going to happen. But the main difference between Rena and Dr. Eerie here is that Rena has killing intent at this time. She is a much more emotionally unstable and emotionally volatile and very, like, the level of anger and upsetness that she is far more than Dr. Eerie. And she is angry enough and unstable enough that she is, depending on if Shion said the completely wrong fucking thing, Mion would get a very confused looking Rena the next day. When Rena shows up to school and expecting Mion not to show up and be like, oh god. And she might be thinking, and then all of a sudden you see Mion like, hi Mion. But I'm just saying this. If Shion were to say right now, even though Rena thinks she's Mion, if Though there's also a chance that her Hinamizawa syndrome, either giving her extra sensory psychic powers or just the advent of Oyashiro-sama possessing, maybe it could be the actual god deity Oyashiro-sama possessing Rena right now, talking through her, or in a combination with her, like a temporary DBZ fusion. It's like the fusion dance, but with brain cells and ghosts. You guys remember Space Ghost, Coast to Coast? Just saying. Then again, regardless if she knows it's Shion or Mion, which there's a good chance Rena could have just figured it out on her own too. She's not stupid. She's actually the second best detective in all of fiction, the first being Batman. There's two ideas. One, what if you had a reformed Heath Ledger Joker and John Cena's Peacemaker working together with Ben Affleck Batman? Or even the Christian Bale Batman. But how about this? What about Batman and Rena? You have Batman and Robin. How about Batman and Rena? What if Gotham somehow intersected with Hinamizawa? Then again, I still think it'd be interesting, how the people doing the Studio Ghibli, filters with the pictures. What if they did that with Hinamizawa art? Preference for this style of sprites, not the... don't get me wrong, I still like the original visual novel sprites, but I like these better, the anime sprites. I like the designs of the anime sprites much, much more. But I'm just saying, if Shion were to say right now, regardless if Rena knew she was Shion or Mion or whatever, even if she had no intention of killing her right now, if Shion were to say that it'd be better for Satoshi if Satoko were to just be dead, so that Satoshi wouldn't have to worry about her, Rena would kill Shion on the spot. Shion would be buried next to that tree over there. And if not, Rena would be making plans, which would be very odd for actual Mion if Rena goes to kill her. Like I said, this whole game is just a Russian roulette of who's going to be the one who has active Hinamizawa syndrome. Sometimes it's everyone. But technically everyone in this game kills everyone else at some point. And sometimes it's everyone at the same time. I'm just saying, yes. The main impression that I don't know what impression you guys get from this picture, but the facial expressions I get here is restrained killing intent. Barely restrained killing intent. You remember that scene where Hisoka makes that offhand joke to Illumi Zoldyck and Hunter x Hunter about killing Killua? Yeah. That's what we're getting here. So let's see how this progresses. Tisk. I was startled when I realized Rena was looking straight into my eyes. She was smiling, but her eyes looked creepy. I never voiced what I was thinking, but she was looking at me as though she figured out that I was blaming Satoko. She beamed when she noticed my fear. She smiled as though she understood that I thought that way because of love. She was giving me the creeps. I could hear thunder roar in the distance. The rain began to pick up. Do you feel jealous of Satoko-chan because she monopolizes Satoshi-kun? I avoided answering immediately this time, but Rena seemed to know what I was thinking already. I wouldn't be upset even if you did. That's just how it is when you're in love. Thanks. You've been encouraging Satoko-chan despite that. That's admirable. Of course I have. She's my friend. I sounded so fake, I felt like spitting on the floor. All we can do is encourage Satoko-chan and Satoshi-kun. I don't know how to save them from their situation. Satoko is relying on Satoshi-kun way too much. If she were stronger, he wouldn't have to suffer in her place. Ha 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 ha, you sound really straightforward. Rena nodded with an unflinching smile, even though my remarks could be taken as harsh. What was this mysterious girl thinking? It was difficult to get a read on her. Maybe Satoshi-kun feels that way a little too. Eh? Rena kept smiling, but her smile looked strangely cold. I think he's tired of protecting Satoko-chan, and he's aware of that. Given the type of person Rena is, I don't think she'd say something if she wasn't certain of it. Because of that, she must have been confident in what she just told me. Why do you think that? He said so. What? Satoshi-kun secretly confessed to her. Rena asked me to keep it that way. Satoshi-kun told me that he felt tired of protecting Satoko-chan. He was feeling guilty, though. I don't think he would say something like that. But however, it wasn't likely that Rena was lying. I had just met her, so I didn't know what made me feel that way, but my hunch told me that she was telling the truth. I heaved a huge sigh. Satoshi-kun might have gotten so tired that he couldn't help telling someone. Even so, even if he thought that way, he wouldn't tell somebody so easily. Maybe Rena led him to do so. She might be capable of something like that. I don't understand. Well, until next time, hope everyone has a good day. Later.